dear. The woofing. Welcome back to Moore Up North. I'm Shannyn Moore, and this is Andrew Halcro, who's an effete chap, as I remember. What would make you, and these are our questions from the audience, what would make you leave the Republican Party? President Palin?
Make me leave the country.
I know. Can we get political asylum somewhere?
Exactly.
Hi, Canada. Remember us?
I've always loved Asia.
Yeah. Well, it's either that or Gitmo. What would, I mean...
I don't think there's any, I think, party affiliation, you stand on principle. I don't put much faith in party affiliation, but when I look at what the parties stand for, I'm more Republican than I am Democrat. I'm actually more libertarian than I am Republican because I believe in free markets and I believe in people having rights, and that means the right to choice and the right to who you want to marry and those kinds of choices. I think government has no business being in there. We can't even take care of Social Security and Medicare. What the hell are we doing in people's private lives?
Right, and if you look at, the whole marriage issue and the right to choose issue.
That's right. Us heterosexuals haven't done the greatest job with marriage, okay? With the national divorce rate is 50%.
And that's just the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's right. That's just Newt Gingrich.
That's just Newt and Rudy. You don't have to look very far. And I think that if you want everyone to have equal opportunity to be miserable, let them all get married.
That's right.
I'm just kidding. I'm not married. I wouldn't know anything about it. Talk about the future of the Tea Party movement as you envision it. They boil over.
Well,
what is it?
I think this is the one election cycle where they'll have an opportunity, and maybe in 2012. But I think this is an effort where their candidates are going to get elected. They'll elect some candidates from various states, and their candidates are going to get to D.C. and they're going to be sorely disappointed. Joe Miller is.
I don't know what that's like.
Well, here's a perfect example. One of Joe Miller's platforms was he wants to return federal land to the state. Okay, great idea. I'm sorry, but how long have we been trying to get ANWR open? And he's just going to march into D.C. and take back 94 million acres. I don't think that's going to happen.
There's, I think, what is it, Article 12, Section 12 of the Constitution, that's pretty firmed up. Just the fact that we're a state, that's been pretty much established.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, talking about Denali National Park, can you imagine? You rent cars. Can you imagine if we're just like, yeah, the hell with it, let's just develop.
Well, and here's...
we can't, we do have some value in just what we are raw.
And here's the reality. You'll have people out there that are saying right now, because of state budget pressures in state parks, the facilities aren't even being kept up. And so we're going to take on more responsibility from the federal government. I'd love to hear, the next governor's take on taking more responsibility and absorbing more costs from the federal government. I'm sure the next governor might have something to say to Joe Miller.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at towns that are still on the honey bucket system, we're not taking care of all the issues that we need to at this point. Someone said, glad to hear you say it's still unconstitutional. This would be ballot measure 2. Shouldn't these initiatives be vetted for constitutionality before they're put on a ballot?
Well, it was appealed. The placement on the ballot was appealed, and the Supreme Court ruled that no, the voters had a right to vote on it. But still, there's a lot of technical problems with the bill in and of itself. And many parts of it are still blatantly unconstitutional. It violates even the judge's suggestion that something more flexible work, because what they've chosen through the initiative process isn't the most flexible process to allow for parental notification.
And it created a felony for a doctor.
That's right.
How are you going to enforce that without going through people's records?
Well,
it was just poorly planned, but I think it actually did what they wanted it to do.
Again, public policy-wise, the average age of a physician in this state is, I believe, 53. We're having a hard time attracting new physicians. The last thing you want to do is be passing laws that making medical procedures felonies. That's not going to attract the kind of medical professionals that we need. Already, there's a significant amount of Alaskans who have to fly south to get treatment. And so we're already not attracting the best of the best as far as the medical profession. And these types of laws do nothing but make people feel good, but they're unconstitutional. And it wastes time, it wastes effort that could be better applied to prevention and education, and it also costs the state money to lose in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it certainly will. Where's your fiscal conservancy now, Mr. Who was that? Menery. Andrew, why don't you take on Joe Miller in another internet series like the Effete Fellow?
Yes, there you go, yes.
It could be Meet the Constitution.
Yeah, there you go.
What does Scott say in the theoretical debates against Joe Miller? Scott McAdams, of course, the mayor of Sitka. I don't know if you've had a chance to see him or talk to him.
I have seen him. I have not talked to him. What does he say in a hypothetical debate? In any debate, I think he tries to prove, he has to try and prove and show that Joe Miller's views are out of the mainstream of the state of Alaska, especially because Scott comes from the Southeast, and Southeast, of course, is heavily dependent on federal subsidies, whether you're timber subsidies, marine highway subsidies through the state. I mean, the Southeast is a region that has very little infrastructure and depends heavily on federal spending and state spending.
And the Coast Guard is so, you know, I fished Southeast back when there used to be herring in the Sound, you know,
right.
and I look at it and I'm just like, you know, the Coast Guard, that's a huge, huge part of the funds that come in. I just, yeah, I think there's that. And I think, actually, Scott, if Scott just says what's on Scott's mind, he'll do just fine because he is just a real Alaskan. He's not some, you know, elitist lawyer from Kansas who got a federally funded education at West Point and now thinks we need to get rid of the education system. It's like, well, I'm through the gate, now shut it, you know. A comment from Andrew, how do you feel about the rise in nasty, hateful rhetoric in this primary?
It's unfortunate because, you know, the problems that the country face are complex and they're serious. I mean, you've got a national debt of over $13 trillion. You have Social Security and Medicare, which are already in trouble with the boomers retiring in force starting in 2010. You have a lot of socioeconomic factors that are driving some negative numbers. You've got a recession, you have a job market out there that's got a 9.5% unemployment rate, and at least 5% of that is structural, which means you have to change everything about what you're doing. I mean, the country has a lot of problems, and the rhetoric, the hateful rhetoric, the nasty sound bites and the finger pointing, it doesn't solve any problems. I mean, it's indicative of why we're in this mess, is because every 2 and 4 years, we have to listen to the same garbage.
Well, how much do you think we had a low voter turnout, considering how many dollars were spent on this? You know, I think just Joe Miller, it was over $500,000 that he spent. In Alaska, I mean, it was like $10 a vote is what he spent. How much do you think it just encourages people to just tune the whole rat race out and just be like, look, I can't tell them apart because they're both yelling. You know, in this case, it wasn't both of them yelling. But how much
I think you have that in any race. In Joe Miller's race, with only one side yelling, he was the side that got most attention.
And what does that tell you?
Just tells you that negative campaigns win.
Yeah, whoever yells the loudest.
That's right.
That's a sad state of affairs. Maybe we should have a quiet contest, like my mom used to do with us. Okay, we're gonna have a quiet contest. Whoever wins gets a cookie. Oh my God.
Or a line. Don't come on my side of the line.
That's right. I can tell you that's probably the one time I was quiet. I heard on the radio, this election will come down to who puts the most oil in the pipeline. What's your opinion? Republicans versus Democrats.
I don't think any candidate is going to put oil in the pipeline. The only people that are going to put oil in the pipeline are the producers. And to be perfectly honest with you, Prudhoe Bay's in decline. There are no more Prudhoe Bays out there. The best we can hope for is to mitigate the loss of production every year by doing infield drilling and finding small patches, maybe offshore drilling, which is a long ways away, might find oil and gas. I mean, you're not going to fill up the pipeline again. The only hope you can have is to kind of try and keep it at that 550,000 barrels a day level. You're not going to grow the numbers. It's a declining resource. It's a non-renewable resource, and they've been pumping it for now 30 years.
Well, I think that we should send Mark and marching right back to Washington with Scott on his heels, and they should open ANWR.
Yeah.
I think they should. I think if 2 Democrats were in there, we haven't tried that in a while. We've had the most powerful Republicans in the Senate representing Alaska, and they couldn't do it. Give 2 Democrats a chance, tell them to go back there and trade it with environmentalists. Say, we'll lock up Pebble. They're not going to do Pebble anyway. It will be no loss to them. We'll lock up Pebble, open ANWR, everybody will be happy, and, you know, the ozone will go away, whatever.
The ozone.
Could Lisa run a write-in campaign?
No. I mean, she could, but it wouldn't be successful. Write-ins are way too difficult, and with a name like Lisa Murkowski, it has to be spelled properly, it has to be legible. You know, there's going to be...
It'd have to be a sticker campaign.
Yeah, it would have to be some... And let's face it, I mean, people barely vote. They're not going to remember, oh, I forgot my sticker in my den. I'm going to go get it and put it on my ballot. I mean, write-in campaigns just traditionally have not been successful. It's got to be a third party where your name is printed on the ballot.
Which is why Arlis Sturgielewski had to win that primary.
That's right.
Because it wasn't going to happen. Right. Who will you support in this Alaskan Senate race if Lisa doesn't get in?
If it comes down between Joe Miller and Scott McAdams, I'm voting for Scott McAdams.
Well, there's really no other, I mean, first of all, I think that you'd actually line up with him on a lot, you know? And I'd be interested to get your take on him, but, you know.
Well, I just feel that Joe Miller, I'm sorry, but Joe Miller is just too risky and too dangerous of a candidate. And in this case, I'd have to vote for, you know, as a Republican, and no offense to Mr. McAdams with this statement, but I'd have to do what a lot of people do, and that's vote for the lesser of two evils as you see them. You know, the devil I'd vote for the devil I don't know versus the devil I know.
Well, I'll take it, because they're going to count your vote the same as me.
That's right, and it doesn't matter what the motive behind it is.
You know, but
I like that Scott McAdams click.
I think that, you know, we could do worse, and we have. We already have one crazy person out there that's a celebrity. We don't need this guy, too. And by that, I mean Joe Miller. What are you going to run for next?
I'm going to run for the door after this is over, because I'm going to take my beautiful wife to dinner.
And that's it. That's well, it. I mean, that's obviously a very fine option. But
yes. Oh, you meant political office?
Yes. Do you ever want to do it? Do you ever miss it?
Sometimes. I mean, I love the public policy, but I hate the politics. And you know, I could never want to close Republican primary. I'm too moderate, and I accept that. And you know, you just try and find what your groove is, and you live it.
Well, that must be frustrating. I mean, that you could. I think you are a moderate. We don't agree on lots of things, but the fact that I think that you would want to do the best thing for Alaska, and I think that you would agree that that's probably where I'm coming from, even though we don't get there at the same place all the time, that attitude of going up to an issue, you from one side, me from the other, and saying, okay, we're gonna have to move this rock. And you're like, well, let's move, you know, that whole attitude is really not here anymore.
No,
now it's just like, you know, slugging it out. And I feel as an Alaskan, as I'm a registered Democrat now, but it's pretty new, that we have to have healthy sides of discussion for the betterment of the state. You know, you can't have one big fat right wing over here and a little tiny left wing and expect to get off the runway.
That's right.
And right now it's like the wing has just gone crazy on the right.
Well,
with him there.
You know, I always love, my favorite quote of all time is Eisenhower, and he said the middle of the road is the most usable surface. The only thing to the far left and the far right are gutters. So, I mean, you know, defining the middle of the road on some issues is difficult, but that's why you stay in the middle, because you're able to move. Maybe sometimes you need to move a little left on this issue. Maybe sometimes you need to stay a little right on this issue. And a lot of people don't like that, especially the true culture warriors and the true primary partisan warriors that show up to vote in the primary. They want somebody who will pass a purity test, somebody who they can check off all the little boxes that you know, you're pro-life, you're pro-this, you're pro-that, you're this, you know. I mean,
well, I saw one of their questionnaires, it was pro-life, 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 pro-life. It was like 5 of the questions, you know, and then it was, do you hate gay people enough?
Yeah.
You know, and then how do you feel about gambling? I'm like, where is it on jobs, health, you know, the things that really matter to us. Yeah. So thanks so much for coming in.
It's my pleasure. It's always great to be here.
It's always fun.
Thanks.
We'll be right back with Moore Up North.